We live in a world that claims to offer infinite freedom, endless choices, endless entertainment, endless opinions. We are told that this is the most liberated society in human history. And yet, something feels wrong. People feel empty, exhausted, anxious, and strangely powerless. Despite all the comfort, despite all the technology, despite all the progress, many feel trapped in lives they never consciously chose. Herbert Marcuse saw this coming. Long before social media, before smartphones, before algorithms and dopamine addiction, Marcuse warned that modern society would not control people through force or fear. It would control them through satisfaction. It would not silence dissent, it would absorb it. It would not crush individuality, it would redefine it. And in doing so, it would create what he called the one-dimensional society. Marcuse was not a conspiracy theorist. He was a philosopher, a social critic, and a member of the Frankfurt School, a group of thinkers trying to understand why modern societies, despite education and democracy, still produced conformity, domination, and submission. Writing in the aftermath of fascism, world wars, and industrial expansion, Marcuse asked a deeply uncomfortable question: why do people cooperate with systems that limit their freedom? His most famous book, One-Dimensional Man, published in 1964, was not an attack on capitalism alone, nor on socialism alone. It was an attack on advanced industrial society itself, a system that appears free, rational, and prosperous, yet quietly eliminates critical thought. Marcuse argued that modern society trains people to think in only one direction. Not through censorship, but through normalization. Not by banning ideas, but by making alternatives feel unrealistic, childish, or dangerous. A one-dimensional society is not one where people cannot think, but one where they no longer imagine that things could be fundamentally different. In this society, people are not chained. They are integrated. They are included. They are rewarded for obedience and distracted from reflection. Freedom exists, but only within predefined limits. You can choose what to buy, what to watch, what to post, but not the structure of the system itself. This is what Marcuse meant by one-dimensionality. The flattening of thought. The elimination of contradiction. The disappearance of negative thinking, the ability to say no to the entire framework of society. In earlier eras, oppression was visible. There were masters and slaves, kings and subjects. Resistance was obvious. But in modern society, domination becomes invisible because it operates through satisfaction. People identify with the system that dominates them. They defend it. They depend on it. They cannot imagine life without it. Marcuse observed that advanced industrial society creates false needs, desires that are manufactured, imposed, and reinforced to keep people consuming, working, and conforming. These needs feel personal, but they are socially engineered. The need to constantly upgrade. The need to stay entertained. The need to be productive at all times. The need to be busy, validated, and approved. False needs are dangerous because they feel like freedom. People believe they are choosing, when in reality they are responding. Their desires are anticipated, shaped, and fed back to them. And because these needs are satisfied, people feel content, even as their autonomy shrinks. True needs, according to Marcuse, are different. They are the needs for freedom, creativity, peace, genuine happiness, and meaningful work. These needs are harder to satisfy because they require structural change, not consumption. A system that thrives on efficiency and profit has no interest in fulfilling them. So instead, it offers substitutes. Entertainment replaces meaning. Comfort replaces freedom. Productivity replaces purpose. And consumption replaces identity. Marcuse saw that modern society doesn't suppress individuality, it commodifies it. You are encouraged to be yourself, but only within marketable boundaries. Rebellion becomes fashion. Criticism becomes content. Even dissent is absorbed and sold back to you. This is why Marcuse argued that traditional forms of protest lose their power. When rebellion is expected, it is neutralized. When criticism is allowed but ineffective, it becomes harmless. The system becomes tolerant, not because it is moral, but because tolerance can be used as a form of control. Marcuse called this repressive tolerance. A society that allows all opinions equally, not to promote truth, but to dilute resistance. When everything is permitted, nothing matters. When every view is aired, no view has impact. Noise replaces dialogue. Expression replaces action. In a one-dimensional society, even language becomes flattened. Words lose their critical edge. Freedom becomes a slogan. Democracy becomes a procedure. Happiness becomes a product. Language no longer points beyond the system, it reinforces it. Marcuse warned that technology, far from being neutral, becomes an instrument of domination when it is shaped by power structures. Technology increases efficiency, but efficiency for what? Productivity for whom? Convenience at what cost? When technological rationality dominates society, everything is evaluated in terms of usefulness, performance, and optimization. Human beings become functions. Relationships become transactions. Life becomes a system to be managed rather than an experience to be lived. This kind of rationality appears logical, but it is deeply irrational because it ignores human flourishing. It reduces existence to survival within the system. People become means, not ends. And yet, people accept this willingly because the system delivers comfort. Marcuse understood that comfort is one of the most effective tools of control. A comfortable population is less likely to resist. When life is manageable, people tolerate injustice. When distractions are abundant, people avoid reflection. When survival is secured, freedom feels abstract. The one-dimensional society does not need brutality. It only needs compliance. And compliance is easiest when people are tired, entertained, and dependent. Marcuse did not believe this condition was inevitable. But he believed it was dangerous because it hides itself. A society that openly represses can be confronted. A society that satisfies cannot. The most radical aspect of Marcuse's philosophy is his insistence on negative thinking. Not negativity in the emotional sense, but the ability to negate, to say that what exists is not necessary, not natural, not final. Negative thinking is the power to imagine alternatives. One-dimensional society destroys this ability by presenting itself as the only possible reality. Capitalism, socialism, bureaucracy, consumerism, whatever the dominant system may be, it presents itself as unavoidable. There is no alternative becomes common sense. This is how domination becomes invisible. When people stop imagining alternatives, power no longer needs to justify itself. Marcuse believed that art, philosophy, and critical theory were among the last spaces where transcendence could survive, where people could glimpse possibilities beyond the system. True art disrupts. True philosophy disturbs. True thought refuses to fit neatly into existing categories. That is why such thought is often marginalized, ridiculed, or absorbed into academia without impact. It is allowed to exist, but not to change anything. Marcuse's work became influential during the 1960s, especially among student movements, civil rights activists, and anti-war protesters. They recognized themselves in his critique. They felt that society was prosperous but hollow, free but unfulfilled, advanced but spiritually impoverished. Yet even these movements, Marcuse warned, could be neutralized if their energy was absorbed into the system without structural change. Today, Marcuse's warnings feel even more urgent. We live in a world of permanent connectivity and constant stimulation. Silence feels uncomfortable. Boredom feels unbearable. Attention is fragmented. Thought is shortened. Everything moves faster, except understanding. We express ourselves constantly, yet say very little. We consume information endlessly, yet reflect rarely. We feel informed, yet powerless. This is one-dimensionality in its most advanced form. The system no longer needs to silence you. It just needs to keep you busy. Marcuse challenges us to ask a frightening question: are we free because we choose, or because we are satisfied? Real freedom, for Marcuse, is not the ability to choose between products or lifestyles offered by the system. It is the ability to question the system itself. It is the ability to refuse false needs. It is the courage to imagine a different form of life. This kind of freedom is unsettling. It brings discomfort. It threatens stability. And that is why it is discouraged. A one-dimensional society prefers happiness over truth, stability over justice, and comfort over liberation. It teaches people to adapt rather than transform. Marcuse did not offer easy solutions. He did not promise utopia. He simply insisted that without critical thought, society becomes a prison without walls. And perhaps his most disturbing insight is this: the more advanced a society becomes, the harder it is to recognize its own domination. Because domination no longer looks like oppression. It looks like normal life. If 1984 warned us about control through fear, Marcuse warned us about control through satisfaction. If Orwell feared censorship, Marcuse feared integration. If Orwell imagined people crushed by power, Marcuse imagined people shaped by it. The one-dimensional society is not imposed from above, it is reproduced daily through habits, desires, and acceptance. And the question Marcuse leaves us with is not whether society controls us, but whether we still have the capacity to resist. Because the most dangerous form of unfreedom is the one you no longer recognize as unfreedom. And the most radical act today may not be rebellion, but thought.